Okay, we are really in the home stretch now. I'm going to turn my geometry back off. I will turn my skeleton layer back on. And now I am going to start connecting my controls to the reverse joints so that they work properly. And this is going to be a little bit finicky. So, for example, when we did the upper body, we just used a whole bunch of parent constraints. But in this case, there are specific motions that I want things to have, so I may involve the other constraints as well. For the foot control to the heel, I'm going to use the same parent constraint that we used for the upper body, and that is control curve first, joint second, apply. I'll do the same thing on the other side, control curve first, reverse joint second, and apply. So that takes care of that one. The next thing I want to do is the toe pivot, and the toe pivot is purely rotational. And for a purely rotational constraint, I'm going to use an orient. It'll be kind of the same thing, where I want to be sure that I am maintaining offset. I'm going to select my curve first and my reverse joint second. This will only do rotational motion, and that's good because the toe pivot is a purely rotational motion. The same thing with the ball control. The ball control should only ever rotate the foot, so I'm going to select the curve first, the joint second, and apply my orient. And I'll do the same thing on the left, toe pivot, to reverse toe, ball control, to reverse ball. The toe wiggle is an up and down motion, and that motion is going to be a point constraint. This only does translational motion. So again, I'm going to check maintain offset, and in this case, instead of selecting the reverse joint, I'm going to select the wiggle control and then the IK handle. And the same thing over here, the wiggle control, then the IK handle, and then my point constraint so that this only translates. Okay, let me close that up. The last thing that I have is this knee control, and for that I'm going to use a special kind of constraint that only works with IK handles. This is called a pole vector. So I'm going to add it first, and then I'll show you what it does. I'll go left knee pole vector to the left ankle IK handle and apply. Same thing on the right side, control curve to IK handle and apply. So what the pole vector does is it controls the way that the knee bends. So I could bend my knee backwards or forwards, or just wiggle the knee side to side. This is super important because for all the times that IK works really well, there are also a lot of times that IK breaks. Let me turn my skeleton layer off and my character geometry on, and you'll see that when I pick up the foot, at some point it just bends so far that it rotates backwards. When I take my pole vector control, I can pull it forwards, maybe to the side a little bit, and eventually I can get that foot to bend back in the right direction. So pole vectors allow you to change the direction that IK bends. At this point, all of my controls should work. My foot control will move the foot around. My toe pivot will rotate the foot from the toe. My ball control will let me create that heel popping motion. And finally, my toe wiggle will let me wiggle the toe. So I've got two things left to do. They are both very simple things. The first one is that when I look at my controls, each one of them has some extra channels that they really don't need. The foot controls will both translate and rotate because I used parent constraints. They will never scale, so I'm going to select them both and then lock and hide my scale channels. The toe pivot and the ball control are rotate only. I used that orient constraint, so these will never translate, and these will never scale. And finally, these pole vectors and these toe wiggles, these are translate only. They will never rotate and they will never scale. So I'm going to take all of these and lock and hide selected. Finally, the very last thing, this is the left side, so I'm going to add it to my left layer to make it nice and pretty and blue. This is the right side, so I'm going to add it to my right layer to make it nice and red and easy to see. And that takes care of the lower body controls. Yay, we're almost done! Now we can hop up and down, and we can do a little dance. Yay, dancing! Yay! So I've got one more really important thing to add, and that is a control that will allow us to scale the character up and down and add it to various scenes so that it can be animated at any size. So join me for that. It is going to be really simple, trust me on that one, and it'll be nice and short. So take your time with these feet and make sure that you're comfortable with them, and then move on.